All right. So before we really get into everything, I kind of, feel like I know you a little bit because we've already done the blog interview. So the questions that I have picked out are a little more specific, kind of based on some of the notes that you gave me. And if you're ready,
Okay,
I'll just jump right in.
sure.
Okay. So tell me, in your own words, a little bit more about the goals and the purpose behind Brummet Media Group.
Well, we started this business back in 1999. My husband had actually been teaching drums for quite a while and doing drum repairs. And in 1999, I was involved in an accident and had been recovering from that full time physiotherapy. And I started really questioning where I was going in life. I was running a business. My husband was running a business. We were doing fairly well, all the shoulds in life, but we weren't satisfied. I personally felt unfulfilled, that there was a hole in myself, and I needed to find purpose and value in my life, and especially after the accident, it gave me that wake up call. That told me it doesn't matter where you are in life or what age you are. Something can happen to take your plans away from you. And so I decided that I didn't want to live with regrets. So I made sure that we started our business with that in mind. So everything that we do, whether it's the blog or the radio show or counseling, whatever it is we're doing, volunteering, interviews like this, it's always about how can we make a difference in the world? What kind of impact can we have in regards to helping other people live a more positive or proactive lifestyle? So that's really my goal in life, and I follow it with this passion that um, the energy of this just throws me into the day, and I have sometimes a hard time just slowing down and backing off a little. Taking that time off can be a hard thing for me, but it is something that I enjoy. And once I started on this journey, I really felt so much more fulfilled, and I felt like my life had so much more meaning. And I felt like my life did have value and purpose in life because I was hearing from all of these people who said, you know what, you've inspired me. And that is more than a bigger gift than I could have ever expected out of this.
Wow, yeah. That's an incredible story, and just from what I've already been reading about you on your blog and everything, I do get a sense of there's no regret there that you guys are pursuing all these different avenues, and you have so much going on. Like you said, you have the blog, you have the radio show. Um, I love your what is it, the consumer reports that you do like on like products and stuff. Like I love all that stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I love all that stuff that you guys do, so it's really great. Um, so I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about the kind of the business side of it and the work that you do with authors. Specifically, I want to know some of your tips that you have for authors. Anything that comes to mind as far as marketing that you think maybe authors, especially independent authors, should be trying to pursue more?
Well, one of the myths out there as in the world of writing, especially for people who haven't been writers in the past, is that it's this kind of leisure activity,
Oh, I
but
know.
it's not at all. Not at all. You're
Yeah.
spending a good 80-90% of your time just running your business and doing the marketing, and you're
Mhm.
lucky if you get 10% to actually write. And that seems like such a contradiction from the perception of from the outside. But really, you are running a business, whether you have one book, whether you're a freelance writer, a staff writer, what have you. You are a business, and it's your image that you're putting out there with everything that you write and everything that you do. So it's really important to really come from a place of knowing who you are and what your strengths and weaknesses are, areas that you really would be okay learning and expanding in, and other areas that you're saying, you know what, that's not where I want to go, I'd rather outsource that. Knowing that information, really doing the homework and understanding who you are and asking yourself some really in-depth questions is key to running your business as a writer. You have to be terribly organized. You
Yes.
really have to have that self-discipline. That's got to kick in every moment of every day. You can't, especially when you have a home office like I obviously have here, it doesn't go away, but neither does the home, neither does the family. And so you have to put those, you really have to segment your time and say, no, this is my writing time, this is my marketing time, and avoid having people dropping by. That's another problem with
Yeah.
at home offices. People will want to drop by and, gosh, you're home anyway, I'll come by for a tea and visit. And it
Yeah.
interrupts your train of thought, and
Yeah.
you just can't have that happening. So being self-disciplined, being tenacious to go after your dreams and goals, really understanding yourself and your place in this moment, and having the courage to manage the people around you, your friends and family, that they can't just drop by, that they really do have to make an appointment, these kinds of things. So those are the first pieces of advice that I always sit down and speak with authors about.
Okay, well that's good. I'm glad you mentioned about the home office because I was going to ask you about that. Um, I kind of have a home office. I have a desk. That's my whole office. But you're right. You do have to be able to manage that time. That you're working on. Your stuff as opposed to I'm watching a television show and working at the same time. I don't do that. If I'm working, I'm working. When I step away from my desk, that's when I'm living my life. So that was great advice. Now, I wanted to also ask you about the business plan. I just from communicating with a couple of authors that I've met, it doesn't seem like a lot of authors have a set business plan. They just start writing and kind of see what happens. Even I kind of started out that way when I first got started. I was just writing, didn't really know what was going on. Later on, tax stuff came up and trying to project, where am I going to spend my time and my money. So do you have any thoughts on a business plan for a writer?
Well, there's several points in starting a business plan. One of the first things that you might want to be looking at is your organizational part of your operational part of your business. This involves, where your office is going to be located, what kind of equipment you currently have. Is there any equipment that you can borrow or rent or use, or outsource? If you need printing done, for instance, you can outsource that. Understanding these is key because you can understand where your budget's going to go as well. If you can outsource, for instance, your printing as opposed to investing in a high-end printer, it affects your budget. So really understanding your operational, it's important. But you also need to understand your organization. So how are you going to be keeping records of things? Um, what records do you really need to back up? What records are your tax people going to need? So to find out more about your taxes, even if you're doing them yourself, if you decide not to outsource them, what I suggest is visiting with an accountant anyway and sitting down and saying, okay, I am running a home-based business, and then specifying exactly what your services are. And they're going to be able to counsel you on receipts and records that you need to keep now for later on. You don't want to, end up come tax time and go, gosh, I didn't keep a vehicle log, or,
Yeah,
gosh, I didn't
yeah,
keep a record of our household expenses and
yeah.
that kind of thing. So visiting and getting that information from the tax accountant is really important, especially if they specialize in business and small business in particular. They're going to be able to find all of those, areas where you can write it off at the end of the year, and it really does help.
No, well, those are good points. I mean, like I said, a lot of that I figured out kind of by trial by error, but hearing it from you kind of just kind of reiterates that. But yeah, you're right. I think the first year I started this, I tried to do it myself, but now I'm better organized with all my information, and then I just go to an accountant. It's for me, it's easier. So I guess that's kind of a choice each person has to make for themselves.
Absolutely. But you're right, having that business plan in place is really important, not just for yourself, so that you can look at it at the end of the year and say, well, this was the goals that I had when I created the business plan. How have I measured up against that goals? What were my weak areas? What can I do to improve them? Am I still going that path, or am I going to change it a little bit? So it's really important to have that plan, have it flexible, reevaluate it every year or two. But it's also for that contingency. What happens if you're unable to run your business? What happens if you're sick? If you go into a coma, you get in an accident, something happens with your family, and you're not able to run your business. Who's going to look after things for you? Who's going to receive the royalties should something happen to you? How are they going to know what's going on in your business if you don't have a business plan in place that they can refer to and go, okay, this is what's going on?
Wow, those are even some points I didn't think of. That was really good. Yeah, so I need to go back and look at my business plan. Thank you. Now, I did want to ask you another question, because you are so multifaceted. You have the blog, you have the radio, and you write as well, you publish. Um, I have a little blog that I'm working on and constantly adding to it, and it also serves as my webpage because I have different connections there. But what kind of advice would you offer as far as what things do people look for on a website or maybe a blog that keeps people coming back to see what it is you're working on?
Okay, a blog would be slightly different than a website, although I
Right.
understand that there are a lot of people out there that combine the two.
Hmm.
A blog is an interactive, it's almost like social media in a way.
Yeah.
You have new posts going up regularly,
Hmm.
whatever your schedule is. If you decide that, hey, I'm going to post every week or every month or every day, it depends on what you decide that is going to fit with your schedule. But you also want to be consistent.
Hmm.
So if someone is used to you having a post go up every Tuesday and they come up 3 weeks from now and you've skipped that Tuesday, they might not come back.
Right.
So consistency really is the key. If you have a certain time, a certain day that you're putting your posts up, stick to that. Be very self-disciplined about that. One handy thing about blogs, as you probably already know, is you can schedule posts way ahead of time
Yeah, I
for
love
publication
scheduling.
on a certain day at a certain time. And that works really, really well for being consistent with your content. You want it to look nice. You want it to be, whether they're visiting your site or your blog or your radio show or your social networking, you want everything to bleed together
Hmm.
so that when they go to a site, it refers to all of your other activities and other pages where you exist, so they can find you at other places.
Hmm.
But also that your colors, your theme, your photographs, your imagery is similar. So when they go to these different sites, they go, yep, that's Lillian's site. And they'll recognize you and understand that feel everywhere they go.
Well, I love that advice that you give about the consistency. I was a little worried that I'm always telling people that consistency is really important to me, and I thought, well, maybe it's just me. But again, hearing it from you lets me know that I'm kind of on the right path. I love scheduling because I am actually one of those bloggers who posts daily, and if I didn't schedule ahead of time, there's no way I would be able to do that. But I think you're right about having consistency across social media. Like, if you have a website or a blog and you also have a Facebook page, just the colors match. So, like you said, people recognize you. They're not confused as, am I in the right place or not? So, I think that's really good advice. I also wanted to ask you about another author question. Like I said, I know you have so many facets, but I'm really, as an author, I'm curious about the advice that you have. Once you make the decision, you write the book, and you publish it. Now it's time to get out there and distribute it. Um, there's so many ways to go about doing online distribution, but my question is, what about the bookstores? Do you have advice on how authors can get into bookstores, or maybe ways to kind of finesse that a bit?
Okay. Yes. There are a lot of different avenues that a person can go to when it comes to getting into retail stores, local retail stores. Don't just look at bookstores in particular, but also look at cafes or restaurants or whatever theme your book is in. Like, for instance, you might have a sporting theme, you might have someone that in your book that has cancer, you might have a chapter that focuses on sailing, whatever it is that you can connect to a retail store with their clients is really important to keep in mind as well. So most stores will want to use commission.
Mm-hmm.
So you would bring the books in at your cost, they would sell them, and then you would get whatever commission you arranged with them.
Right.
So that's typically how it goes, even with bookstores, because they don't know you and you're unknown. They don't know that you have a strong audience locally. Maybe you're very new. Maybe you haven't done a lot of promotions in the area just yet. And so they're going to be a little hesitant to reach into their own pocket and purchase those books. But it's a lot safer for them to bring the books in on commission because it's no cost to them.
Right.
They just have to put out the shelf space. So that's a really easy way of getting into those stores. There's lots of ways of networking with stores and cross-promoting with stores that you're associated with. We have lots of tips in that regard, but definitely look at the possibility of getting your books in there on commission, because I think that's really where you're going to get the best results from.
That's good advice. I know I've kind of run into that myself a little bit, and I think the person that I interacted with uses the term consignment. I guess that's the same thing?
Yep.
Okay, good. Yeah, I had
Yep.
an experience with a local boutique, and that's why I was so amazed that you mentioned not just bookstores, because this was actually a boutique who happened to carry some books, and so I never would have thought to try to go to places other than bookstores. So again, great advice. Now I wanted to ask you another question, and this is more about your work as an author. I know that you write some poetry, and I'd like to kind of hear a little bit
Yes.
about your motivation behind your poetry.
Oh, thank you. I love writing poetry. It started when I was quite young. It was a way for me to purge emotions. I had grown up in a kind of, rough environment. I, we moved around a lot. My mom was married a lot. Um, I was on my own when I was 13. Both my brothers were on their own when they were 16. A couple of my mom's husbands and boyfriends found me a little more attractive than they should have. And so it was not an ideal childhood.
Right.
I ended up having all this stuff inside of myself, and I was so angry and so frustrated, and I didn't have a way of understanding it. let alone verbalizing it. So when I was able to pour out my emotions on paper, it was a way of me purging this information, these emotions, in a safe way, um, as opposed to a self-destructive way.
Right.
And it took many, many years before I was able to actually look at my poetry as a healing tool. I would just pour and purge up to that point. But then I would go back to it years later, sometimes decades later, and read it and realize, wow, I'm starting to piece all this together. And I was able to take all those puzzle pieces and create a map of my life and be able to really understand my background and my family and myself and the emotions that I had and why I had them. So poetry to me was very powerful in that regard. When I first published my first book, the first edition, I was terrified, absolutely terrified when I actually saw that it was available to the public. I didn't know how the family was going to take it. I didn't know how the public was going to take it. My main goal, though, was to try to show people who had gone through similar things in their background that they can move beyond that and they don't have to have this weight and this pain that they carry with them, that they can get heal from that, and there is life beyond that. And that was really my first goal with it. But then later on I realized that it was actually helping other people who worked with children and youth in those situations. It helped them understand them better. So it was really powerful in that regard. My most recent book is a little bit more on the mature side. It's more adult.
Mm-hmm.
It's my journey from, like, I don't know, the age of 25 to 42 or something like that. And so it shares my story about dealing with aging parents and finding freedom in life, as opposed to feeling like I was caged up from the past. Also, dealing with the passing of my parents, suicides, and things like that. I was able to share all of that and share this new journey that I'm on in regards to pursuing this amazing passion and really feeling like I'm making a difference in the world. So poetry has evolved along with me, and I absolutely love playing with words. To me, it's like having a huge box of Crayola crayons to play with. All these different words and rhythms and ways of working with words to create a picture or a feeling. Like a song has that effect on us, poetry has that effect on us too. And so I love just playing.
Well, that's another amazing story. Makes me appreciate poetry. I tried poetry for a while when I was younger, but it didn't connect with me. Obviously, the way that it connected with you, I connect more with the narrative story. But I mean, I totally can relate to your sense of healing that your writing provided for you, because my writing does the same for me. So again, that's just amazing. So if
Thank
you
you.
so at this point, I'm all out of questions for you. I really enjoyed this. If you could maybe think of a final statement that you just want to share, and go ahead and drop in the name of that poetry book. And I know you also have a new book out for kind of a self-help book. So go ahead and drop the titles of those and just kind of leave me with your
Okay.
final thoughts.
Okay. All right. If you have time, I can read from the most recent poetry book too. So
Oh, yeah.
depends on what you want there. Do you want me to start with that?
Sure, yeah.
This one is called Wings on a Breeze, and this one is actually it was written within moments after a dream that I had after my mom and her husband were chronically ill, and they had been chronically ill for a really long time. And in December 27th of 2010, they took their own life.
Wow.
And so it took me a while before I could put any kind of words on paper because it was such a powerful, emotional time for me. But I had this dream, and it was like when I wrote this poem, it was like I was grasping at these remaining wisps of this dream. And it's called Wings on a Breeze. It mentions actually a phrase in here called building your castle in the sky. It's a phrase my mom used to say to me quite frequently, and it was basically don't be afraid to dream. Don't be afraid to dream big. And, it's okay, not to reach it, but just go ahead and dream big. So that was her saying. It's called Wings on a Breeze. I dream of feathers ruffled and rippling by the force of the wind. Sounds like laundry on a line swept by a brisk breeze. I am alive, and I lament a life of bitter resentment. The terrible need for approval, now faded with her death, leaves this mind weighted down by thoughts of sacrifice and law. I regret that childhood dared me the strength to support, while circumstances struck and struck and struck again, taking bits and pieces of her joy, her trust, her strength. And with her soured look on life, I grew into a woman and her friend. She no longer fights the wind to stay afloat and fly to that special castle in the sky. Today she soars without bruised wings nor battered body to hinder her. While I, now in midlife, I who never knew wings, have sprouted a pair, so small, so awkward. Will they enable me to fly one day and try my own flight with the wind?
That was beautiful.
Thank you. That was from the book Rhythm and Rhyme, which is just released in ebook and print format. It's our sixth book. My husband has some poetry in there as well. He's a musician and drum teacher and has written many lyrics for bands and things like that. So he decided to include some of his artistic work in this book, which I'm really proud to say that he's a part of that. My first book of poetry was called Towards Understanding. It's now in its second edition. I also have a two-book series called Trash Talk, Book 1 and Book 2, and it's about living a green lifestyle. So it walks you through the R's of zero waste, and then it also includes, the second book goes a step farther from that and into reducing water use and energy use and how to save money and many other aspects of living green, including volunteering and all of that kind of thing. So it's more about living consciously, proactively, and green. I also have a nonfiction book out that's titled Purple Snowflake Marketing, which is the self-help book you were talking about. And this is a guide for authors. It basically walks them through the very beginning of their career as writers and shows them how to develop a unique and effective marketing and business plan, and gives them a step-by-step guide taking them through their career with each book that they write. So every time they write a new book, they can go back to Purple Snowflake Marketing and create a new marketing plan for that book that suits that book in their unique situation at that moment in time. So those are the books that we have available. We also actually have another one. It's a small booklet. It's called Jumpstart for Writers, and it's a very small booklet. I think it's about 45 pages or something like that, but it's just an introduction into the world of writing, what to expect, what does the world of writing involve.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. I was very interested in your self-help topics, but now I'm gonna have to check out your poetry too. So, thank you so much. Thank you so much for talking with me this evening, and I look forward to reading more from your blog and seeing you around the blogosphere.
Oh, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for taking the time to watch this interview. I do hope you found it enjoyable. Please check out the links below to learn more about this author and their work, and also to learn about me, Toy Thomas, the author of the Eternal Curse series, and more. Thank you.